New England Patriots. The disappointment? Malcolm Butler benching. Super Bowl 52. Even dynasty teams are immune to self-destruction. After intercepting Russell Wilson to win Super Bowl 49, Malcolm Butler was their proven clutch defender. But in Super Bowl 52 against Philadelphia, Bill Belichick made the most inexplicable decision in Patriots history. He benched Butler for the entire game. The result? Nick Foles threw for 373 yards. The Eagles scored 41 points, and Brady's perfect season ended with him catching a pass that should have been a touchdown. Butler watched from the sideline as his replacement got torched repeatedly. To this day, Belichick has never explained why. Buffalo Bills. The disappointment? The drought continues, missing the playoffs 2010 through 2016. Buffalo's drought lasted 17 years, but the 2010s were especially cruel. They had the perfect setup in 2014. Elite defense, explosive running game, and they only needed to be a backup quarterback to make the playoffs. Instead, they lost to a third-string Steelers quarterback, extending their misery. The worst part? They were mathematically eliminated from playoff contention in Week 17 multiple times, while other teams celebrated on their home field. Miami Dolphins. The disappointment? The Tannehill years. Waiting a decade. Ryan Tannehill had every excuse in the book. Bad line, no weapons, terrible coaching. Miami gave him 7 years to prove he was the answer. 7 years of he's finally putting it together, and if he just had help. The cruel irony? The moment he left for Tennessee, he became an all-pro quarterback and carried the Titans to the AFC Championship game. Miami spent a decade developing a franchise quarterback for someone else. New York Jets. The disappointment? The butt fumble game, November 22nd, 2012. Thanksgiving night, national television, division rival Patriots. The Jets were getting embarrassed 21-0 when Mark Sanchez took the snap, rolled right, and ran directly into his own lineman's rear end. The ball popped loose, the Patriots returned it for a touchdown, and in 52 seconds of game time, New England scored 3 touchdowns. The butt fumble became a meme that haunts Jets fans to this day. It perfectly captured a franchise that finds new ways to fail. Baltimore Ravens. The disappointment? Cundiff's miss. AFC Championship 2011. The Ravens were 22 yards away from the Super Bowl. Billy Cundiff had made this kick thousands of times. The hold was perfect. The snap was clean. And it wasn't even a pressure situation. They had a timeout. Instead, Cundiff pushed it wide left. The Patriots celebrated, and Baltimore's best chance at a championship with Ray Lewis in his prime evaporated. They'd win it all next year, but this miss cost them a potential dynasty. Cincinnati Bengals. The disappointment? 2015 wildcard meltdown versus Pittsburgh. Cincinnati led 16-15 with 136 left. The Steelers had no timeouts. All the Bengals had to do was not commit a penalty, and they'd win their first playoff game since 1990. Instead, Vontaze Burfict delivered a vicious hit on Antonio Brown. Then, Adam Jones shoved a Steelers coach. 2 personal fouls, 30 yards, and Chris Boswell nailed the game winner. A quarter-century drought continued because of 30 seconds of pure stupidity. Cleveland Browns. The disappointment? 0-16 perfect storm 2017 season. The Browns didn't just go winless, they became a punchline. They had 14 different starting quarterbacks from 2010 to 2017. They drafted Johnny Manziel over Aaron Donald. They let analytics nerds make football decisions. The 0-16 season was the culmination of a decade of organizational incompetence. When your fans are celebrating tying the Steelers in the final game, you've just hit rock bottom. Pittsburgh Steelers. The disappointment? AB and Bell destruction, 2018 to 2019. The Steelers had everything. Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, and Ben Roethlisberger in their primes. They should have been in their championship window. Instead, Bell held out the entire 2018 season. Brown went insane, live-streamed locker room speeches, and forced his way out. By 2019, both superstars were gone, and Pittsburgh's championship window slammed shut. They turned a dynasty into a soap opera. Houston Texans. The disappointment? Deshaun Watson trade, draft day 2017. The Texans could have had Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. They had the 12th pick, and Watson was their hometown hero from Clemson. Instead, they traded up to draft defensive end Derek Barnett? No, wait, that was Philadelphia. Actually, Houston did draft Watson at number 12, but only after Kansas City grabbed Mahomes at number 10. The real disappointment? Watson became a superstar, then demanded a trade after they fired the only coach he respected. Houston wasted a generational talent because of organizational dysfunction. Indianapolis Colts. The disappointment? Luck's early retirement, August 2019. Andrew Luck was supposed to be the next Peyton Manning. Instead, the Colts' terrible offensive line got him killed. Shoulder injuries, kidney laceration, concussion after concussion. At age 29, in his absolute prime, Luck walked away from football. He was tired of being hurt, tired of rehab, tired of pain. Indianapolis had their franchise quarterback and let him get destroyed. Luck retired during a preseason game, and you could hear Colts fans booing as he walked off the field one final time. Jacksonville Jaguars. The disappointment? Blake Bortles in the AFC Championship, 2017. The Jaguars' defense was historically great in 2017. They shut down Big Ben, demolished Tom Brady for 3 quarters, and were one drive away from the Super Bowl. But Blake Bortles was still Blake Bortles. Down 20-10 in the fourth quarter against New England, Jacksonville needed their quarterback to make plays. Instead, Bortles threw a pick six to basically end the game. The defense gave them a championship-level season, and Bortles fumbled it away. Tennessee Titans. The disappointment? 1 yard short redux, 2019 AFC Championship. The Titans had magic in 2019. They knocked out New England and Baltimore as massive underdogs. Ryan Tannehill was playing like an all-pro. Derrick Henry was unstoppable, and they were one win from the Super Bowl. Then, they ran into Kansas City's buzzsaw offense. The Chiefs scored 35 points in 3 quarters, and Tennessee's Cinderella story ended in disappointment. They were so close to proving the 1999 team's heartbreak was worth the wait. Denver Broncos. The disappointment? Peyton's arm dies. 2015 season. Peyton Manning returned from injury in 2015 looking like a broken old man. He couldn't throw 15 yards downfield. His arm strength was gone. His accuracy was shot, and he threw 17 interceptions in 10 games. The Broncos had the number 1 defense in football, but they nearly missed the playoffs because their legendary quarterback had become a liability. They won the Super Bowl despite Peyton, not because of him. Watching greatness deteriorate in real time was painful for everyone. Kansas City Chiefs. The disappointment? No playoff wins, 2010 to 2017. The Chiefs were consistently good throughout the 2010s, but couldn't win when it mattered. They lost to Pittsburgh 18-16 in 2016 despite outgaining them by 200 yards. They blew a 21-3 lead to Indianapolis in 2013. The most painful? 2017 against Tennessee. Kansas City was the number 1 seed at home against a wild card team. They lost 22-21 and wasted the best regular season in franchise history. Andy Reid's playoff failures haunted this franchise until Mahomes finally broke through. Las Vegas Raiders. The disappointment? The Tuck Rule karma. Entire decade. Oakland spent the 2010s paying for the Tuck Rule. They had exactly 1 playoff appearance in the entire decade, 2016, when they lost in the first round after Derek Carr got hurt. The Raiders drafted Jamarcus Russell, gave huge contracts to aging veterans, and moved to Las Vegas. Al Davis died, the team was sold, and Oakland lost their franchise forever. The 2010s were a lost decade, punctuated by relocation heartbreak. Los Angeles Chargers. The disappointment? Rivers never gets a ring. Phillip Rivers was Hall of Fame level for 15 years, but the Chargers wasted every opportunity. The 2010 team was loaded, #1 offense, #1 defense in yards allowed. They lost in the divisional round. Rivers played through a torn ACL in the 2007 AFC Championship and nearly beat the Patriots. He threw for 40,000 yards in powder blue and never got a championship. The Chargers moved to LA, Rivers left for Indianapolis, and San Diego lost their team without ever seeing their quarterback get the ring he deserved. Dallas Cowboys. The disappointment? Dez caught it. 2014 divisional round. With 4:42 left against Green Bay, Dez Bryant made an incredible catch along the sideline for what should have been a 31-yard gain to the 1-yard line. Instead, the refs overturned it on review, claiming Dez didn't maintain possession through the ground. The Cowboys turned the ball over on downs. Aaron Rodgers threw the game-winning touchdown, and Dallas's best playoff run since the 90s ended on a technicality. Dez caught it. Everyone knows Dez caught it. The rule was stupid, and it cost Dallas a shot at the NFC Championship. New York Giants. The disappointment? To boat trip. 2016 wild card. The Giants were 11-5 and hosting a playoff game for the first time since 2008. They had a top 10 defense and Eli Manning playing well. Everything was set up perfectly. Then, Odell Beckham, Victor Cruz, and Sterling Shepard took a boat trip to Miami before the wildcard game against Green Bay. They partied, posted Instagram photos, and showed up flat against the Packers. New York lost 38-13 in a game that was never competitive. The boat trip became a symbol of misplaced priorities and wasted opportunity. Philadelphia Eagles. The disappointment? Dream Team Nightmare. 2011. Vince Young called them the Dream Team after Philadelphia signed Nnamdi Asomugha, Jason Babin, and Ronnie Brown in free agency. They already had Michael Vick, LaShawn McCoy, and Deshaun Jackson on offense. Instead of dominance, they got chaos. Vick got hurt. The defense couldn't stop anyone despite expensive signings, and they finished 8-8 and missed the playoffs. The Dream Team became a nightmare and a cautionary tale about free agency hype. Washington Commanders. The disappointment? RG3's knee. Wildcard 2012. Robert Griffin III was electric as a rookie. Offensive Rookie of the Year. Playoff appearance, the future was bright. Then, Washington played him on a torn ACL against Seattle in the wildcard round. RG3's knee buckled on the FedEx Field turf. He crumpled in agony, and his career was never the same. Mike Shanahan should have pulled him earlier. The franchise should have protected their investment. Instead, they destroyed their franchise quarterback for one meaningless playoff game. Chicago Bears. The disappointment? Double doink. 2018 wild card. Cody Parkey lined up for a 43-yard field goal to beat Philadelphia and send Chicago to the divisional round. The snap was good, the hold was perfect, and Parkey connected. Sort of. The ball hit the left upright, bounced off the crossbar, and fell incomplete. The double doink eliminated the Bears and ended their best season in years. Parkey was cut immediately, and Chicago's championship hopes died with the most Bears way possible. A crushing special teams failure. Detroit Lions. The disappointment? 0-16 and Calvin Johnson retirement. Detroit went 0-16 in 2008, but the 2010s were somehow worse. They wasted Calvin Johnson's entire prime. The greatest receiver of his generation retired at 30 because he was tired of losing. Megatron caught 1,964 yards in 2012 and never saw a playoff win. Barry Sanders retired early, Calvin Johnson retired early, and Matthew Stafford demanded a trade. The Lions are where Hall of Fame careers go to die. Green Bay Packers. The disappointment? Wasting Aaron Rodgers' prime. Aaron Rodgers is arguably the most talented quarterback ever, but Green Bay only reached one Super Bowl in the 2010s. The 2014 NFC Championship collapse against Seattle was devastating. They led 19-7 with 5 minutes left and lost in overtime. The Packers consistently had bad defenses, questionable coaching decisions, and special teams disasters. Rodgers carried them to the playoffs repeatedly, but the organization failed to surround him with championship-level talent. One ring in 15 years is organizational malpractice. Minnesota Vikings. The disappointment, Minneapolis Miracle, then Philly. The Minneapolis Miracle against New Orleans was the greatest moment in Vikings history. Stephon Diggs caught a 61-yard touchdown with 10 seconds left. US Bank Stadium exploded, and Minnesota was one win from the Super Bowl. 1 week later, Philadelphia destroyed them 38-7 at home. The Vikings became the first team to lose a conference championship in their own building. They went from miracle to misery in 7 days, and their fans' hearts were ripped out twice in 2 weeks. Atlanta Falcons. The disappointment, 28-3, Super Bowl 51. Nothing will ever hurt Atlanta sports fans more than February 5th, 2017. The Falcons led the Patriots 28-3 with 8:31 left in the third quarter. They were 99.6% likely to win according to ESPN's win probability. Then, everything collapsed. Matt Ryan took a sack to knock them out of field goal range. Kyle Shanahan called questionable plays. Tom Brady became, well, Tom Brady. The Patriots scored 31 unanswered points, won in overtime, and gave Atlanta the most painful loss in sports history. 28-3 will haunt this franchise forever. Carolina Panthers. The disappointment? Cam's confidence dies. Super Bowl 50. Cam Newton was Superman in 2015. MVP, 15-1 record, unstoppable on the ground and through the air. Then, Denver's defense got to him in Super Bowl 50. The Broncos hit Cam repeatedly, pressured him into mistakes, and broke his confidence. When Von Miller forced a fumble late in the game, Cam hesitated to dive on the loose ball. That hesitation defined his career. He was never the same fearless player again. Superman became human in the biggest game of his life. New Orleans Saints. The disappointment, no call, and Bountygate. New Orleans had 2 chances at Super Bowls stolen from them. The 2018 NFC Championship no call against the Rams was the worst officiating decision in playoff history. Nickel Roby Coleman destroyed Tommy Lee Lewis with no flag thrown. But the real disappointment was Bountygate in 2012. Sean Payton was suspended for a year. The team was gutted by penalties, and their championship window with Drew Brees was wasted on a scandal. The Saints had a Hall of Fame quarterback and sabotaged themselves. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The disappointment? Jameis Winston's interceptions. Jameis Winston threw for 5,109 yards in 2019, the 8th quarterback in NFL history to throw for 5,000 yards. He also threw 30 interceptions, including pick sixes that cost Tampa Bay multiple games. Winston had all the physical tools, but couldn't stop turning the ball over. The Bucs moved on, signed Tom Brady, and immediately won the Super Bowl. Winston's inability to protect the football cost Tampa Bay years of contention and proved that talent without decision-making is worthless. Arizona Cardinals. The disappointment? Carson Palmer's ACL, 2014. Arizona was 9-1 and the best team in football when Carson Palmer tore his ACL against the Rams. The Cardinals went from Super Bowl contenders to first-round playoff exits in one play. Palmer was having an MVP caliber season. The defense was elite and everything was clicking. Instead, they limped into the playoffs with Ryan Lindley and Drew Stanton, lost to Carolina, and wasted their best chance at a championship. One injury destroyed everything. Los Angeles Rams. The disappointment? Jeff Fisher's mediocrity, 2012 to 2016. Jeff Fisher went 31, 45, and 1 in 5 seasons and somehow kept his job. The Rams were perpetually 7-9, drafted poorly, and wasted years in football purgatory. The moment Fisher was fired, the Rams hired Sean McVay and immediately became Super Bowl contenders. Fisher's conservative, outdated approach cost LA half a decade of development. They went from 4-12 to the Super Bowl in 2 years just by changing coaches. San Francisco 49ers. The disappointment? Kaepernick's regression, 2014 to 2016. Colin Kaepernick took the 49ers to a Super Bowl and NFC Championship game in his first 2 seasons. Then, everything fell apart. Jim Harbaugh left, the team lost defensive stars, and Kaepernick's mechanics deteriorated. By 2016, he was benched for Blaine Gabbert, the same quarterback who threw for 2,241 yards in the playoffs suddenly couldn't beat out career backup quarterbacks. Whether it was the system, the talent around him, or his own development, Kaepernick's fall from elite to unemployed was stunning. Seattle Seahawks. The disappointment? Malcolm Butler's interception, Super Bowl 49. Seattle was 1 yard away from back-to-back championships. They had Marshawn Lynch, the best short yardage back in football, and 26 seconds to score from the 1 yard line. Instead, Russell Wilson threw a slant to Ricardo Lockett. Malcolm Butler made the greatest defensive play in Super Bowl history, and the Seahawks dynasty died on the goal line. The decision to pass will haunt Seattle forever. They were one handoff away from being remembered as one of the greatest teams ever. Every franchise in the NFL has a moment from the 2010s they'd love to forget. Some were bad luck, others were bad decisions, but all of them show that in the NFL, heartbreak is always one play away. Which team's disappointment hurt the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more brutal NFL analysis that'll make you question everything, hit that subscribe button. Your team's next collapse is probably already being planned. New England Patriots. Patriots fans still act like they're royalty even though their dynasty ended years ago. These are the same people who went from being Boston's forgotten stepchild to acting like they invented winning football. 6 Super Bowl titles in 20 years made them insufferable, and losing Tom Brady hasn't humbled them one bit. Patriot fans will watch their team go 7-10 and still find a way to lecture other fans about doing things the right way. They talk about the Patriot way like it's some ancient philosophy instead of just having the greatest quarterback ever. Now that Brady's gone and proven he was the secret sauce by winning another ring in Tampa, Patriots fans are stuck making excuses for why Bill Belichick suddenly forgot how to coach. The worst part? They're already planning their comeback speech for when they're good again, completely ignoring that their success was built on one man who's currently living his best life in Florida. Buffalo Bills. Bills fans are professional heartbreak addicts because they keep coming back for more punishment no matter how many times this team crushes their souls. These people have been conditioned to expect pain. 4 straight Super Bowl losses in the 90s broke their brains, and they've never recovered. Bills fans will jump through flaming tables in sub-zero weather just to watch their team lose in the playoffs. They call it Bills Mafia, like it's some badge of honor. But really, it's just Stockholm Syndrome with extra steps. Josh Allen shows up and suddenly they think this is their year. Every year, completely ignoring 20 years of evidence that January always ends in tears. The most Buffalo thing ever? Their fans are more famous than their team. Everyone knows about the table-smashing lunatics in the parking lot, but nobody talks about actually winning anything meaningful. Bills fans have perfected the art of making losing look fun, which is probably why they keep doing it. New York Jets. Jets fans are convinced the universe is personally conspiring against their football team. These people have built their entire identity around being cursed, like they're the main character in some cosmic tragedy instead of just fans of a badly run organization. Jets fans love misery more than they love football. Aaron Rodgers tears his Achilles 4 plays in? They're already making memes about it instead of being genuinely upset. Mark Sanchez runs into his own lineman's butt and fumbles, instant classic. They collect these disasters like trading cards, comparing their suffering to other fan bases like it's a competition they're trying to win. The worst part is they've gotten so comfortable with losing that they don't even know how to handle hope anymore. Give them a decent quarterback or a promising draft pick, and they immediately start explaining why it won't work out. Jets fans have weaponized pessimism to the point where they're almost rooting for failure just so they can say, "I told you so." Miami Dolphins. Dolphin fans think having a perfect season from 1972 makes them relevant in 2025. These people cling to Don Shula and Dan Marino like they personally played on those teams, constantly reminding everyone about championships their grandparents watched while ignoring 50 years of mediocrity since then. Dolphins fans will watch Tua get his brain scrambled for the third time in 2 seasons and still convince themselves he's the answer. They hype up their high-speed offense in September, then act shocked when it completely collapses the moment they play anywhere colder than a Miami Beach hotel pool. But somehow, it's never the team's fault. It's the weather, the refs, or bad luck. The funniest part? They still pop champagne every year when the last undefeated team loses, celebrating something that happened when Nixon was president, like it's some kind of personal achievement. Dolphins fans are living proof that you can survive entirely on nostalgia and denial, especially when you have year-round perfect weather to distract you from reality. Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals fans are paranoid. They're convinced everyone is still sleeping on them, even after making the Super Bowl and proving they're legitimate contenders. These people spent 31 years watching their team choke in the playoffs, so now that they're actually good, they can't believe it's real. Bengals fans will watch Joe Burrow throw for 400 yards and still complain that he's not getting enough respect in MVP conversations. Jamar Chase breaks every receiving record in existence, and they're still upset he's not the face of the NFL. They've gone from lovable losers to insufferable winners in record time, constantly reminding everyone that nobody believed in us, while ignoring that everyone clearly believes in them now. The weirdest part? They're still acting like underdogs despite having one of the most talented rosters in football. Bengals fans have spent so long being ignored that they don't know how to handle attention, so they've created imaginary slights to keep that victim mentality alive. Success hasn't cured their paranoia, it's just given them new things to be paranoid about. Cleveland Browns. Browns fans are delusional optimists because no matter how many times their franchise destroys their hopes and dreams, they somehow convince themselves that next year will be different. These people have watched 25 years of pure football hell and still show up every Sunday like Charlie Brown trying to kick the football. Browns fans will watch their team go 0-16 and spend the entire offseason explaining why they're actually close to a breakthrough. They'll trade away multiple first-round picks for a quarterback with serious legal issues and convince themselves it's a genius move. Baker Mayfield shows flashes, he's the franchise savior. Baker gets traded, good riddance, he was holding them back anyway. The most Cleveland thing ever is watching their fans get genuinely excited about every new coach hire, every draft pick, every free agent signing like they haven't seen this exact movie play out in disaster dozens of times before. Browns fans have weaponized hope to the point where reality can't touch them anymore. They're not just optimistic, they're clinically delusional, and somehow that's what makes them lovable. Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers fans act like they invented football and everyone else is just playing catch-up. These people wave 6 Super Bowl rings around like participation trophies while completely ignoring that half of them happened when their parents were in diapers. They're scattered across the country thanks to Pittsburgh's economic collapse, but somehow that makes them feel more special, not less. Steelers fans will invade your stadium, wave their ugly towels, and act like they own the place because some guy named Franco Harris caught a deflected pass 50 years ago. They love talking about their tradition and family values, while conveniently forgetting that they haven't won a playoff game since Obama was president. 3 head coaches since 1969? They act like that's genius management instead of just getting lucky with timing. The worst part is they genuinely believe other fan bases should respect them for being classy, while they're literally the most obnoxious visiting fans in football. Steelers fans have convinced themselves that being everywhere makes them America's team, when really, it just makes them America's most annoying relatives who won't leave. Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens franchise started in 1996 when Art Modell packed up the Browns and moved them 300 miles south. Ravens fans worship Ray Lewis like he's a Baltimore Saint despite his very obvious legal issues. Then turn around and lecture other fan bases about character and integrity. They act like Ed Reed invented the safety position and pretend their defensive legacy goes back decades when it really goes back to when they hijacked someone else's team. The most Ravens thing ever is how they've convinced themselves that being born from controversy makes them more authentic. They didn't earn their team through years of suffering, they got it handed to them through corporate theft. But somehow, they've rewritten history to make themselves the victims instead of Cleveland. Ravens fans are professional identity thieves who stole a team and then stole the moral high ground too. Jacksonville Jaguars. Since their birth in 1995, the Jags have mostly been an afterthought in the NFL. Their lone shining moment came in 2017 with the Saxonville defense, which almost punched a ticket to the Super Bowl before Tom Brady did Tom Brady things. Outside of that near miracle, it's mostly been bad football, questionable ownership, and ongoing rumors about moving the franchise. Their fan base is small but fierce. A lot of Florida man energy and teal jerseys fiercely clinging to the idea that one day this team could rise beyond mediocrity. Now, they're rolling with a young head coach and a general manager that looks like he's in high school. It's possible they might finally get it together, but until they consistently win, the Jags remain forgettable in the NFL. The most Jacksonville thing ever is having fans who are more passionate about proving their team exists than actually winning games. They'll fight you over teal jersey superiority while their team goes 4-13, which is honestly kind of admirable in a sad way. Houston Texans. Texans fans lack identity because as the newest member of the NFL family, formed in 2002, the Texans haven't compiled much of a legacy. They've had star power in J.J. Watt, DeAndre Hopkins, and Deshaun Watson, but never quite pull it all together for a serious run at the Lombardi Trophy. The Deshaun Watson scandal caused a franchise-wide reset that set them spiraling. But then rookie C.J. Stroud arrived in superhero fashion, abruptly turning a lifeless squad into a playoff contender. Suddenly, the Texans have a real hope, something their fans have rarely experienced. They still lack a storied identity and casual fans care little about them, but if Stroud keeps playing at a superstar level, Houston could finally carve out a new chapter. The problem is, Texans fans don't really know who they're supposed to be yet. They're not historic like the Cowboys, not tortured like the Browns, not arrogant like the Patriots. They're just kind of there, hoping CJ Stroud can give them something to build an identity around besides being the team that replaced the Oilers. Tennessee Titans. The ultimate middle-of-the-pack franchise with a few iconic moments sprinkled in. The most famous is Heartbreak, Super Bowl 34, when Kevin Dyson was tackled one agonizing yard short of a touchdown as time expired. That single yard became the stuff of NFL lore and perfectly captures the Titans' experience. They've been competitive in waves, especially during Derrick Henry's bulldozing era, even making a Cinderella run to the AFC Championship in 2019 before reality set in. Titans fans are used to this pattern. Just enough success to stir hope, followed by a playoff exit. Now that Henry's gone, the rebuild cycle has begun again. Never a comforting phrase in Nashville. Passionate, but perennially overlooked. Titans fans just want a season that doesn't end in heartbreak or maybe next year. It's a tradition they're desperate to break, but somehow they keep finding new ways to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. The Titans are professional almosts, and their fans have become experts at swallowing disappointment. Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are one of the most fortunate franchises ever when it comes to quarterbacks. Peyton Manning made them title contenders practically every season and secured a ring in 2006. Then, they seamlessly shifted to Andrew Luck, who looked destined for Canton until he abruptly retired in 2019, leaving the entire organization in shock. Since then, it's been quarterback roulette with mixed results. Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, none could recapture that Manning-era magic. Now it's Anthony Richardson's turn to chase the ghost of Peyton. He's extremely raw and incredibly inaccurate, but electric, and the fanbase is hoping he can rejuvenate a franchise that's been drifting. Colts fans know they're one superstar quarterback away from contending. After all, that's been the blueprint in Indy for 25 years. If Richardson pans out, the next Lombardi might not be too far off. But if he doesn't, Colts fans will have to face the reality that their quarterback luck might finally run out. Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers fans are homeless because they lost their real fan base when they abandoned San Diego, and now they're playing in front of opposing fans every week. These aren't really LA fans. They're refugees from San Diego mixed with a handful of locals who feel bad for them. Half their fan base is just people who bought cheap tickets to watch their actual team play. Chargers fans will show up to SoFi Stadium and get drowned out by Chiefs fans, Raiders fans, or whoever's visiting that week. They traded a passionate San Diego fan base for the privilege of being the least popular team in their own building. It's honestly embarrassing watching them try to generate crowd noise while surrounded by opposing jerseys. The saddest part is they keep pretending this move was worth it because they have a nice stadium now. Yeah, you got a beautiful venue to watch your team lose while being outnumbered 3-1 by visiting fans. Chargers fans aren't just dealing with heartbreak anymore, they're dealing with an identity crisis in a city that doesn't want them. Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are a team with a legendary past and a penchant for chaos in the present. They embrace being the league's outlaws, led by Al Davis with a silver and black flag and a fan base known as the Black Hole, ready to throw down at a moment's notice. They've moved from Oakland to LA, back to Oakland, and now to Vegas. But one thing never changes: the Raiders' swagger. Lately, though, that swagger's been overshadowed by front office turnover, underperforming stars, and coaching turmoil. Raiders Nation still believes a couple of big moves could return them to their 1970s glory, ignoring that each big move has usually ended in heartbreak. Still, those silver and black diehards remain as intense as ever. The city may change, but the rebellious spirit never dies. Raiders fans are professional rebels without a cause, and somehow that's exactly what makes them Raiders fans. They don't just support a team, they support an attitude, even when that attitude hasn't won anything meaningful in decades. Denver Broncos. The Broncos' entire identity revolves around legendary quarterbacks. When they've got one like John Elway or Peyton Manning, they're Super Bowl darlings. When they don't, they've never been any good. After Manning rode off into the sunset, the Broncos flailed around for years trying to patch the quarterback hole. Trading for Russell Wilson in 2022 was supposed to be a grand slam, but it turned into a comedic disaster practically immediately. Instead of a perennial contender, they became the league's punchline. Yet the fan base remains incredibly loyal, selling out the stadium throughout thick and thin. Denver's not used to irrelevance, so patience is wearing thin. They know that once they find the next Elway or Peyton, they'll be back to hosting Lombardi trophies atop the Rocky Mountains. But until then, Broncos fans are stuck in quarterback purgatory, desperately searching for someone who could make their team relevant again. Without elite quarterback play, Denver is just another cold city with a pretty stadium. Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs fans are dynasty babies. For a long time, the Kansas City Chiefs never offended anybody, always competitive, never the main event. Fans prided themselves on Arrowhead Stadium being the loudest place in the NFL, but deep playoff runs were rare. Then, Patrick Mahomes showed up, turning them into a juggernaut that's claimed 3 Super Bowls. Andy Reid's offensive wizardry paired with Travis Kelce's unstoppable routes has established a new NFL dynasty. They bristle at any perceived disrespect, like suggesting the officials give them wins, and they remind everyone that as long as Patrick Mahomes is under center, they're squarely in the title conversation. The problem is, Chiefs fans went from humble, loyal supporters to insufferable winners overnight. They can't handle any criticism of their golden boy quarterback or their championship runs. Mention that they've gotten some favorable calls, and they act like you've personally attacked their families. Chiefs fans have become everything they used to hate about Patriots fans, except louder and more obnoxious about it. New York Giants. Giants might be the league's ultimate wild card. They can be unwatchable for years at a time, and then out of nowhere, they knock off an undefeated Patriots team in the Super Bowl. They've won 4 Lombardi trophies, and 2 of those came courtesy of the Tom Brady kryptonite known as Eli Manning. It's a fan base rooted in old school pride. Lawrence Taylor wrecking offensive lines and Bill Parcells barking orders. They even lay claim to the origin of Bill Belichick's defensive brilliance. But for much of the last decade, Big Blue has struggled mightily, turning out the most boring football in the league year after year. Giants fans live for reminding the Patriots that their perfect season ended in giant heartbreak. Other than their next Super Bowl in 2011, they've been mostly painful to watch. Still, they cling to that mystical ability to shock the world when you least expect it. Giants fans are professional nostalgists who believe that their next miracle is always just around the corner. Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles fans are aggressive and famously intense. They're the people who once booed Santa Claus and pelted him with snowballs. If you wear the wrong jersey in their stadium, you've made a bad choice. For years, the Eagles were the bridesmaid of the NFL, coming agonizingly close to Super Bowl glory. Then, 2017 happened, and they soared to the title behind backup-turned-legend Nick Foles. delivering one of the greatest underdog stories of all time. Now, after another Super Bowl, Eagles fans are more emboldened than ever, quick to remind everyone that they're probably the most well-run team in the NFL. The roster is stacked, and the fan base is just as fearsome as its reputation. You might hate them, but that only fuels them more. Eagles fans have weaponized being disliked into a superpower. They don't just want to beat you, they want to make you regret ever doubting Philadelphia. The most Eagles thing ever is turning their reputation for being awful people into a badge of honor that somehow makes them more dangerous. Washington Commanders. Washington Commanders were once a proud 3-time Super Bowl champion franchise known as the Redskins. Over the last few decades, though, they've become a cautionary tale of rotten ownership and relentless off-field drama. One of the NFL's longest-running soap operas, complete with a name change and endless controversies. But the day Dan Snyder sold the team was one of the greatest days in franchise history. The new era brought a sense of stability, culminating in the emergence of Jaden Daniels, who instantly catapulted the Commanders back into relevance. A franchise once hemorrhaging fans, Washington is regaining a spark of optimism. They've got a fresh identity, a real quarterback, and a chance to bury the past. For a fan base that's endured as much drama as anyone, hope is a welcome change, and they'll happily chase it as far as Daniels can take them. Commanders fans are like abuse survivors finally in a healthy relationship. They want to believe, but they're still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Dallas Cowboys. Meet America's team. Famous for 3 Super Bowls in the 90s and about 30 years of hype since then. Cowboys fans proudly declare themselves contenders every season, only to see it implode in the playoffs or earlier. It's the same old script, but the fan base never seems to tire of it. Jerry Jones remains the figurehead everyone loves to hate. Dallas's biggest rival isn't another team, it's the towering expectations they set for themselves. Despite the lack of postseason success, the Cowboys still draw blockbuster ratings and dominate national conversation. That's the magic of the star on the helmet. Irrelevant whether you're 13-4 or 4-13. Love them or hate them, there's no escaping the Cowboys spotlight, and that's just how their fans like it. Cowboys fans have perfected the art of living in the past while pretending they're planning for the future. They'll spend all offseason talking about this is our year while ignoring 3 decades of evidence that it definitely isn't. Detroit Lions. For decades, the Lions were the NFL's lovable losers, never sniffing a Super Bowl, squandering Hall of Famers like Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson, and leaving fans with eternal heartbreak. If you wanted misery, Detroit was where you got it. But now, under Dan Campbell, they flipped the script. They're tough, they're fiery, and they actually win games. Lions fans who spent a lifetime as the butt of jokes are suddenly talking like they're NFL royalty. But still, after years of torment, you can't blame them for celebrating. They just need some postseason results to back up the talk, and the Motor City is more than ready for it. The most Detroit thing ever is watching Lions fans go from self-deprecating comedians to trash-talking champions in the span of 2 seasons. They've got decades of stored-up confidence finally being released, and they're not apologizing for being loud about it. Lions fans have earned the right to be obnoxious. They just hope it lasts. Chicago Bears. Bears fans are quarterback-starved because one of the NFL's founding franchises, steeped in tradition and fame for their monsters of defense, has never had a great franchise quarterback. Mention 1985 in any sports bar near Lake Michigan, and you'll hear stories of arguably the greatest defense ever assembled, led by Mike Ditka, Walter Payton, and Mike Singletary. Since then, it's been mostly gray skies. They've never had a great franchise quarterback, which is a shocking feat for such a large market. Fans cling to the monsters of the Midway mentality, even if the modern defense is more teddy bear than grizzly. Despite the suffering, Bears fans are fiercely loyal. They're just begging for a quarterback who can throw for 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns and bring the franchise back to glory. Bears fans have watched every other position succeed except the most important one, and it's driving them insane. They've become professional quarterback evaluators, convinced they can spot the next franchise savior from the stands better than their own front office. Green Bay Packers. Packers are one of the NFL's crown jewels, publicly owned by fans, located in the tiniest market, yet historically dominant. They paraded from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers for 3 decades of Hall of Fame quarterback play, and now they're praying Jordan Love continues the tradition. Packers football is religion in Wisconsin, and Lambeau Field is the cathedral. The Cheeseheads will freeze their faces off in sub-zero temps and think it's paradise. They're so used to winning, they treat an 11-6 season like a personal insult to Vince Lombardi's legacy. Do they have front office gripes? Always. Fans claim the team never gives its quarterbacks enough help, yet the victories keep piling up in Green Bay. The standard is basically Super Bowl or bust, and if you dare count them out, they'll just keep reminding you about how they own the Bears. Packers fans have been blessed with generational quarterback play for so long, they think it's their birthright. Minnesota Vikings. Welcome to life as a Minnesota Vikings fan, where heartbreak is practically a rite of passage. They lost all 4 of their Super Bowl appearances, missed a 27-yard field goal to lose a playoff game, and have a knack for snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. The Minneapolis Miracle was a temporary sugar rush overshadowed by the blowout loss that followed. The team has boasted legends like Randy Moss, Adrian Peterson, and Justin Jefferson, but they've never converted star power into a Lombardi. Despite the repeated gut punches, Vikings fans remain unbelievably loyal, showing up in purple and gold fully expecting the next big heartbreak. The Vikings are as smart as any team in football, so fans keep hoping maybe this is the year the script flips. Until then, they're masters at bracing for impact whenever the playoffs roll around. Vikings fans have turned expecting disappointment into an art form. They hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, because Minnesota sports history has taught them that's the only way to survive. Carolina Panthers. Carolina Panthers might be a 90s expansion team, but they've packed plenty of drama into their short existence. They've made 2 Super Bowls, the 2003 Jake Delhomme squad and the 2015 Cam Newton MVP run, but both ended in heartbreak. Since Cam's decline, the Panthers have spun their wheels searching for a quarterback who can return them to relevance. Currently, Bryce Young is the new hope, and Panthers fans are praying he can sustain his late 2024 breakout. Their fan base might be smaller, but they're devoted, especially in the Carolinas. They've tasted success enough just to believe it can happen again, and they're tired of seeing the rest of the NFC South overshadow them. If Young is the real deal, the future might finally belong to Carolina. Panthers fans are like that friend who keeps dating the wrong people but refuses to give up on love. They've been hurt before, but they're convinced the next one will be different. Their loyalty runs deeper than their wins, which is both admirable and slightly concerning. Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta Falcons fans will never escape 28-3 because that infamous Super Bowl collapse against the Patriots will live on in memes and comedic references for eternity. Before that, Atlanta was a fun, high-octane offense featuring Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, but they've never delivered a Lombardi. This fan base is used to having their hopes dashed, usually by their own team blowing yet another lead. Add in a rivalry with the Saints, who love reminding them that they've got 0 rings, and you've got a recipe for endless heartbreak. The Falcons are now in another rebuild, hoping that Michael Penix Jr. can develop into their next Matt Ryan. Falcons fans hang on to every flicker of optimism, but they're all too aware that at any moment, the scoreboard can flip from dream to nightmare. The most Atlanta thing ever is to have the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history happen to them instead of by them. Falcons fans have become experts at watching leads disappear, and 28-3 is tattooed on their collective soul forever. They can't even enjoy a big halftime lead anymore without flashbacks. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay Buccaneers used to be a living punchline, an expansion team that kicked off their history with 26 straight losses and mostly stayed terrible outside of a brilliant 2002 Super Bowl run. They were the NFL's island of misfit toys. That changed in 2020 when Tom Brady arrived and brought a Super Bowl to the land of pirate ships and beach bars. Even after his exit, they stayed competitive thanks to Baker Mayfield suddenly remembering how to play quarterback. Some fans jumped on the bandwagon as soon as Brady rolled into town, which annoys the diehards who survived the creamsicle jersey days and Josh Freeman's meltdown. Now, the Bucs are in a weird spot trying to prove they can thrive post-Brady. The fan base is basically 2 different groups pretending to get along. The lifers who suffered through decades of embarrassment and the Brady converts who showed up for the championship parade. Buccaneers fans are like a blended family still figuring out the household rules, except some members only moved in when the house got nice. New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints were a bottom-tier franchise for many years, nicknamed the Aints with paper bags on fans' heads. Then, Hurricane Katrina bonded the city and the team, culminating in Drew Brees and Sean Payton bringing home a Super Bowl in 2009, a fairy tale ending drenched in Mardi Gras confetti. But success wasn't without drama. Bountygate dropped like a hammer, costing Payton a year on the sidelines. Then came the infamous 2018 NFC Championship no call, a missed pass interference so egregious it nearly broke the internet. Saints fans still blame the refs for stealing a shot at another ring. With Brees long gone, the franchise has been searching for their heir to that championship legacy. Bitterness has set in, but one constant remains: an undying hatred for the Atlanta Falcons.
Saints fans have weaponized their grievances into fuel, and they're convinced the football gods owe them at least one more championship to make up for all the injustice they've endured. Los Angeles Rams. Los Angeles Rams are another team that's led a nomadic existence, bouncing from LA to St. Louis and back. In St. Louis, they had the greatest show on turf and a Super Bowl win. In LA, they went all in with Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford snagging another Lombardi in 2021. Now the fanbase is split between nostalgic St. Louis supporters who feel abandoned and fresh wave of LA fans who appreciate shiny things. Competing for attention in Hollywood is no joke, but winning a Super Bowl definitely helped. McVay's offensive genius and the franchise's willingness to gamble for star power have kept them relevant. Even so, LA is a tough market to conquer, filled with celebrities and rival sports franchises. But if they keep pushing their chips in and winning, the Rams could finally cement their place in Tinseltown's crowded spotlight. Rams fans are like a divorced couple trying to co-parent. The St. Louis group will always feel betrayed, while the LA crowd is just happy to have something exciting to watch between Lakers games. San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco 49ers are NFL royalty, boasting 5 Super Bowl titles and legends like Joe Montana, Steve Young, and Jerry Rice. In the 80s and 90s, they were so good, it felt unfair. Then the 2000s arrived, where they lived at the bottom of the league for a decade. In the past 12 years, though, they've appeared in 3 Super Bowls. However, they've lost them all, leaving fans hungry to reclaim their place atop the throne. The quarterback spots seem to change every few years. Colin Kaepernick, Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy. And each time they flirt with a title, but come up empty. Still, Niners fans remain loyal, spanning from the Bay Area to far beyond. They believe it's only a matter of time before the red and gold add a 6th Lombardi trophy to the case. 49ers fans are like former royalty living in exile. They remember what greatness feels like. They can see the throne from where they're standing, but they just can't quite reach it. The entitlement is real, but so is the track record. Seattle Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks transitioned from NFL afterthought to league powerhouse overnight, thanks to the Legion of Boom defense and a dynamic Russell Wilson. They demolished the Broncos in the 2013 Super Bowl, then famously lost the next one on a last-minute decision to throw instead of handing the ball to Marshawn Lynch, an agonizing moment that still haunts fans. Known as the 12s, Seattle's fans create one of the loudest atmospheres in the league. Even after Wilson's departure, the Seahawks found ways to remain competitive, first with Geno Smith's surprise revival, and now handing the reins to Sam Darnold. While the NFC West doesn't run through Seattle the way it did a few years back, the Seahawks still have enough fight to keep everyone on notice. They might not be the juggernaut of old, but they won't go quietly either. Seahawks fans are like that friend who peaked in high school, but is still pretty cool. They remember that they were the scariest thing in football, and they're desperately trying to recapture that magic while everyone else has moved on. Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals are one of the least discussed teams in the NFL. They've been around forever, but rarely make much noise. Every so often, they pop up with a memorable storyline, Kurt Warner's magical 2008 run for instance, but they've never won a championship. Sustained success is elusive, and the team's attempt to find a long-term quarterback haven't quite panned out. Kyler Murray has shown glimpses of stardom, then hits bumps in the road, leaving the franchise in limbo. Their fans are accustomed to being overlooked, which might be less painful than the public tragedies endured by, say, the Jets or the Lions, but it's still frustrating to hover in mediocrity. Unless the Cardinals find a way to build around their talent and keep it together, they'll stay in the NFL's background, rarely capturing the spotlight. Cardinals fans are like that person at the party who's perfectly nice, but nobody really remembers they were there. They're not terrible enough to mock or good enough to fear. They're just kind of there, existing in football purgatory.